So we are now moving into block 2. This should be after someone has gone through either the initial block of full body linear GBC programming or the backloaded structural balance programming. Because now we're moving into something that is way more intense, way closer to muscular failure, we want to make sure that people are very, very skilled in the lifts we're about to do before we either start to progress through load or through actual hard work intensity. So with the GBC, you should now take us on from 10 to 12 reps down to a very, very efficient sort of 6 to 8 reps. And with the backloaded structural balance program, we should focus on some of that remedial work and get them moving slightly better. Now we come on to the main bulk of our programming, which is now moving away from a linear periodization model into an undulating model. So undulating model is popularized by a lot of strength coaches that talk like Charles Poliquin, Tom Hibbert, where we'll go through phases of intensification, so high intensity, low volume, and accumulation, high volume, low intensity. But we do things a little bit different, and let me explain that to you now. So we run with all of our undulating models a 3-phase system, where we're going to be starting phase 1 as our intensification 1. But in this example, this is going to be our main hypertrophy block. When a lot of people talk about how long program should be, they often talk about like 3 to 4 week phases. And then we speak to people in hypertrophy cycles and bodybuilders who have like 8, 10, 12, 20, like year-long training programs. And where is this middle ground? Because you, I'm presuming, having watching this, probably are going to be working with general population. Unless you work with bodybuilders, then that's fucking epic. Well done to you. But if you work with the general population, there's a few things to consider. The first thing is that people do get bored. Not as often as you think people get bored, right? Often you get bored before your client gets bored, but they will. So having some level of variety keeps them engaged in the program long term, which will help your retention. Also, a lot of your clients are going to talk about wanting to build muscle, but what they actually mean is they just want to be able to have a beer and a donut and not get fat, which is very, very different to the bodybuilder that just only cares about progression, only cares about building tissue. So you need to find this thing where you like, yes, like a hack squat might be better than a back squat to build tissue. But if they love the skill of the back squat and they love learning about this, they love putting load on the bar, that might be the thing that makes them stick to the diet and stick to the training consistently longer. I remember doing a 5-hour seminar with Tom Hibbert, and he said to me, I said, teach me everything you know about hypertrophy. He went, choose the program that your client will train the hardest for longest. And I'm like, I've got 4 hours, 55 minutes here. So what do I do? Well, okay, phase 1, we can still take all the research and all the science that we have about hypertrophy and put this into this great phase. And we're going to be using the client's feedback, the client's recovery capabilities. And if you're looking at things like resting heart rate, blood pressure, HRV, we can use these metrics to decide how long each program should be before we're starting to see them overstretch or overreach in terms of their recovery, because training is about stimulus, creating an efficient stimulus to get the response, and recovery from said stimulus. So when we get to this point where and let me move back through the slides here so I can sort of show you this. So when we sort of cover here, when we have a beginner, right, everything is relatively new. Right? There's going to be a line here, which is this adaptation line. They need to train harder than this line to get a response, but not so high that they hit their recovery capabilities and overtrain. So over time, let's say we start to do a high rep phase, we reach this line, we're now improving in terms of our strength, endurance, stimulus. But eventually, we're going to hit this point where we can't recover from that stimulus anymore, and we have 3 options. We either improve recovery, which is what you're going to be doing anyway, working on sleep and stress and nutrient deficiencies and gut health and things that take the stress off the system to allow us to be able to fill more of that stress cut with hard work in the gym. We could deload by taking a little bit of a break in volume or bringing the intensity slightly down, which is good if you've got a client that has got 2-3 more weeks. You just want to get them over the line. But what if you've got a client that's going to take a little bit longer, right? A deloads isn't going to give you much room. You're going to hit that recovery line pretty quickly again. This is where we change the stimulus and we move to something far away from this. So if we're doing strength for a while and we're seeing signs that the nervous system's a little bit more fatigued, we might move into more of a high volume hypertrophy or strength endurance program. And if you've got someone on the end of the strength endurance phase where they're getting a bit niggles in their elbows, tendonitis, DOMs that last forever, we might move them closer to that strength phase. But if we're in a pure strength, That's going to be a little bit more taxing on the nervous system, and the strength endurance is going to be more taxing on volume than this bit in the middle, which is hypertrophy. We're not really hammering either stimulus, which means we can run this a little bit longer. Also, hypertrophy takes a long time to achieve. So we can run a hypertrophy block much longer than we can run the other two at the extremes. So moving back into our phases here and our undulating model, phase one is going to be like building the granite, building the hard work of muscle building. So we're going to be working at what is the minimum effective dose to get the hypertrophy response we're looking for. So we might start looking at one top set, two top sets, maybe one top set and a backup set. We might want to work more on certain priority areas. And in this block, we're going to be more focused on our overall upper-lower split, which adds a little bit more volume than we did in the initial block, but not diving into target areas like we will do in future blocks, right? We're now going to focus maybe on priority areas here, and we're going to run this phase anywhere between 6 to 20 weeks. We're going to see how they go at the minimum effective dose and start increasing volume over the course of the block until we find that they can't recover from it anymore. Then we're going to move into our accumulation phase, where this is going to be a short, sharp, high volume phase. And there's various ways to do that. I will explain that as we go through the blocks. But there's either a high volume phase that's more systemic, which might be good for someone who wants to work more on the cardiovascular system. Maybe they found out that the problem with growing their quads is that the heart rate gives way before the quads give way. So maybe then we'll start focusing on some of this systemic work, which is maybe more bigger muscle groups paired together, more cardiovascular work, maybe less sort of tension-based, more sort of like overall stimulus-based. Or we could do high volume in terms of local, really diving into a little bit more of the short range exercises. So let's say we do incline dumbbell presses and the big compound lifts in phase one. We might move into our fly variations a little bit more and really start to hammer that individual muscle a little bit more in the high volume phase. And the high volume phase here is one, to give you a little bit more time to target certain muscle groups, but also deliberately designed as a short, sharp, kick in the dick to push you past your metrics, train you harden your current capabilities. So you are needing that little bit of a deload, which moves us on to intensification 2, which is a strength block. And this works for a couple of reasons. The first reason is that the accumulation phase of volume means that our strength phase is now a deload. We've changed the stimulus to allow us to calm down and let us recover from the hard work in the previous two phases. It also works well with Gen Pop, who need to see numbers going up on the bar and goals to keep them motivated in training that a bodybuilder might not need because they just love the gym for the gym. So we can actually start moving into some big lifts, some squats, some deadlifts, some bench pressing, and take the information that we get from this phase then to go into a recovery week or a week off the gym. And then we build the entire next quarter where we move back into intensification 1, build a new hypertrophy program based off their weaknesses in their lifts and what they want from a body part perspective, and then run this cycle again. So hopefully that's giving you a little bit of an idea of what we're doing here. So our phase 1 is going to be upper body, lower body hypertrophy. Phase 2, we're going to go into a local stimulus. So we're going to focus on those target areas, and then we're going to go into strength 1.